it was like I had some agriculture subjects, but it was mostly focused on informatics and electronics. And later I decided I will be focusing more on the informatics. At the same university, I studied PhD. My thesis, my field was energetics, and my thesis was about solar panels, which I don't know how in Turkey, but now in Czech Republic we have a huge boom about solar panels because we want to be we want to be less dependent on Russian gas. So last year and this year is expected to be even higher. We have a huge boom of solar panels. During my studies, during my master studies, I was Erasmus RNG in Samsung 2012, 2013. That's how I know Ercan. He was my buddy. He picked me up at the airport, as I remember, and I spent 1 year in Turkey in Samsung. Okay, but during that time I wasn't still working in the IT. I just finished bachelor studies. I was doing some student job, which were not really relevant to IT. And only after I come back from Turkey in the first year of master, I had to repeat it. I started working as a tester. I was working for a company named Trask. They were basically they hired people and then they kind of like lent those people to another company. So through them, I was working for one bank and we were testing internet banking. Maybe you know Hewlett-Packard Quality Center. So we were using this software. It's a desktop application. Basically, I came there by metro in the morning. I open up the quality center. I open up the email. I got email that, oh, and during this day or this week, we will do this batch of tests. Here you go. And into the quality center, each of us just block some tests and we were running the test based on the test scenario. So that was my first job as a tester. It was still more like a student job. I was only paid like 100 crown per hour. It's like 4 euros per hour. Second job was for an insurance company called Česká pojišťovna. I was a contractor there, oddly enough, as my second job already. I was still paid 100 crowns per hour, so that didn't help much financially wise. They were developing a software for like letting know people about new regulations, like new memos, and you have to tick there that you actually read it. And if you break it, but you sign yourself that you read it, you could have a big problem about it. So I was helping to develop that by testing it in a kind of like a hybrid way. It was like a hybrid between Waterfall and Agile because they were doing, it was a big company and big corporate. And usually big corporates and big companies are like really conservative. And so they don't want to change. And Agile is like a new method, although it's actually from like end of 1990s, but let's say it's fairly new. And so they don't want to switch from waterfall type of development. I will talk about it later, what's the difference between them. And this project was kind of like testing for them, that they were trying, they still prepare it for the waterfall development, but they were doing it, they were kind of implementing some agile approach to it. So we had sprints, sprint plannings, and that kind of stuff. We had like a product owner, it was a lawyer. Yeah, so that was my second job. Then I had a break because I finished my master and I was focusing on my PhD. So for 2 years, I didn't do any job in IT. And I was on second Erasmus in Spain. And after I came from Spain, I started working again as a tester. It was manual. It was almost always manual testing. I'll also talk about it a bit later. And in this insurance company, they were using Jira, but for some reason they want me to write those test cases in an Excel sheet. So I still have those Excel sheets. I kept them as a memory. Yeah, Jira is like for tracking progress, but it's also for tracking bugs or defects. But for some reason, they want me to write down test scenarios in an Excel sheet. When I come back from Spain, I was working this time part-time job. Those were like 1 or 2 days in a week, and this time it was 2.5 days per week. This part-time job in a company that was delivering a software, or actually firmware, for pacemakers. So, you know, if somebody has a heart condition, doctors can give them a cardio stimulator. And that's how it's called in Czech, actually. Pacemaker, it's called in English. So this little machine that sends pulse to your heart, and if you have tachycardia, it can like restart your normal beating of your heart. So that was quite interesting. I was there for 1 year, exactly 1 year. I was doing this for like 9 months, and 3 months I was doing. I was helping to test a system called Certicon. The name of the company was Certicon. And so first 9 months I was in a medical system, and 3 months I was in like camera systems. And they were developing a camera system that has an optical recognition of patterns. You know, that's a big hit. It's actually the first market-wise solution of like machine learning. So if you remember, it was a huge hit for cameras like 15 years ago, maybe more than 15 years ago, when the first cameras was hitting the market that could detect a face on the image. So you could take a snapshot, or you can take the picture when it was detecting a human face that was smiling, for example. So that was the first implementation on the market for machine learning. And in this company, we were developing a camera system that can have multitudes of applications. So, for example, it can recognize cars, vans, and their registration number, their license plates. So if we have a parking lot with the gate, there is a camera that's seeing which car is approaching the gate. It can automatically raise the gate if the license plate is in the system, it's in the database. Or you could, this camera system was also deployed on the Prague airport. And one of the functions was it could detect abandoned luggage. You know, it could be a terrorist threat, or just someone forgets his luggage and is just somewhere there. So it can raise an alert about it. Or you can define a zone where nobody can cross. So if you have those like lines in airport, you can basically draw it with the cursor on the image from the camera, and it will raise again alert if somebody is crossing into this area. Okay, so that was my part-time job, and then I was working full-time job for Broadcom, or actually at the time it was still called Computer Associates, but Broadcom bought it like 2 months afterwards. And there I was testing a test data manager. It was a huge web-based application for masking data, for generating data, so you can generate some kind of set of data that you want. For example, credit card numbers. You cannot just type randomly 16 numbers on a numpad, because all the credit cards, they have to have a specific format. For example, if they start with 4 or 5, it's a Visa card. If it starts with 6, it's MasterCard. If it starts with other numbers, it's another type of cards. And this whole number must be divisible by 11. Why 11? Because 11 is a prime number, and it's a very easy check to check if the number is divisible by 11. It's very easy to check it, to implement it. And if it's not, that means you made a typo. So if you are writing somewhere your number of your cards, you can make a typo in those 16 numbers. So this is a very easy check that you didn't make a typo. If the number is divisible by 11, it probably means you write your number of your cards correct. So this was one of the generation function of this software. I was also helping testing Agile Designer, which is a desktop application. Yeah, that was basically the only desktop application I I ever tested in my career. It's like a kind of like a drawing. You have a canvas where you can draw a diagram or some charts, like a flow chart. So, for example, some process diagrams you can write there. You have like branches, true, false branches, or multitudes like output branches, stuff like that. And also, Broadcom bought this Israeli startup called Blazemeter. Maybe you heard about it. It's an automation tool. It's a plugin for Chrome and Firefox. Maybe nowadays also for more web browsers. And it lets you record what you're doing on a website, and then it will generate a script, a YAML script, and then you can schedule to run this test automatically on some given time and date, and it will do it very quickly. So it's kind of like macro basically, but it's an automated test, and you don't have to have any kind of technical knowledge to make this automated test. So that's very interesting. And one part of Blazemeter was also for performance testing, but I wasn't testing that one. After that, I was in Vodafone. I will not talk about it that much because in Vodafone, they had some kind of data storage or like a warehouse database. It wasn't even running in Microsoft Edge. It was running in Internet Explorer. It was like a super old. It was from 2002. And they were like implementing some new changes because the global Vodafone was developing a new storage system, but somehow here in Czech Republic we could keep the old one, but must be compatible with the new global one. So they were implementing some requirements into it, and I was testing it. Of course, manually there was no point to do this automatically. In Broadcom, I did get familiarized with automated testing. I was experimenting with Ranorex, Cypress, and basically Blazemeter itself. And after Vodafone, I switched to Barclays, and now I'm there in Barclays. My position is called test manager, but that's basically on paper because there is a lack of testers to be managed. So I'm basically still doing quality assurance engineering stuff. And occasionally, okay, I have like one guy under me, and sometimes I'll tell him what to do. That's it. And today I learned that they're gonna switch me to a different team. There will be 8 Indian developers. I will be the only tester, and I am not really keen on doing that. So since today I'm questioning whether I should quit this job or not. Okay, so that was a bit of introduction. Oh, I was talking 10 minutes already. So now, why do we even need testing? So probably best way to answer this is to just give you some examples of failures when it was just checking if yep, so important. So the best way is to show you some failures. I like astronomy. I like cosmonautics. So I prepare a few examples from this kind of field. So in Europe, we have ESA. You know NASA. NASA is American Space Agency, and in Europe we have ESA, European Space Agency. Czech Republic is a member of this ESA. I think Slovakia. You know, we were one country, Czechoslovakia. We split up exactly 30 years ago. 10 days ago, it was exactly 30 years ago since we split up. Some people still think I'm from Czechoslovakia and not Czechia. So Czechia is a member of ESA for a much longer time than Slovakia. Slovakia joined just last year. We joined 2007, I think, or something like that. And you probably know that France have this basically department, or maybe colony, French Guyana. And in French Guyana, because it's close to the equator, they have a spaceport, Cosmodrome, right? So we can launch rockets from there. And because it's close to the equator, we can use the momentum of the planet, so we don't need that much fuel to reach the orbit. And we have our own rockets called Ariana. And there was a nice fuck up with Ariana 5 in 1996, It was the first deployment. How can I say? Like a first launch. It was a first launch of this new type of rocket called Ariane 5. It was using software from Ariane 4. But they just decided to basically copy paste the code from Ariane 4 to Ariane 5. And they said like, okay, we will not test it. We will just use it. We test it for Ariane 4. We will not test it for Ariane 5. And the result was loss of $370 million. The rocket itself and 4 satellites. And the reason was because Ariane 4 was using 64-bit float variable, but Ariane 5 was using only 16-bit signed integer. So what happens? Integer overflow happened. And the rocket was just weird, of course, and it was destroyed, and payload as well. The payload was 4 satellites. Another nice example is Terra 25 from 1980s. It was top-notch quality of radiation treatments, medical device, and there was an overdose of 6 patients, and 3 of them died because of beta radiation. Because there were actually several problems with this hardware unit. For example, the previous version of this machine, they have hardware logs, and they were replaced by software logs. However, the model, if the doctor who was operating this machine did some change within like 8 seconds, he could basically use, instead of default values, the preset values that he was playing around with it would be stored and saved. So he could blast a really high dose of radiation into patient. And this happened, and as a result, 3 people died. So this is possibly even worse example than the Ariane 5. Then my favorite one, Mariner 1. It was supposed to reach, was it Venus? I think it was Venus. And there was a missing hyphen in the source code. Hyphen is this one character in the brackets. And because of that, the Mariner changed its course, and it initiated self-destruct and exploded in the atmosphere. It was in 1960s, I think in 1962. So just 1 year after Yuri Gagarin. If you like writer A.C. Clarke, if you like science fiction, you probably know A.C. Clarke. He commented on this that it was probably the most expensive hyphen in the history. And last example is Mars Climate Orbiter, because it was a very stupid reason for why it failed and burned in the atmosphere, because there were like 2 companies or 2 teams in USA working on it. One in Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They were using metric system because although USA as a whole is using imperial system, very old system, they are not using it for 200 years or something. A lot of people in USA are already using metric system, US Army, scientific institutions, etc. So the GPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, they were using metric system, but the Lockheed company, Lockheed Martin company, maybe you know, they are making aircraft, which was one of the vendors for this project, were using imperial system. So they didn't convert pound seconds squared to Newton seconds squared. And as a result, they lost the Mars Climate Orbiter. It was in 1998. There should be, okay, never mind. The text should be hidden, and I would be asking you about this, but okay, let's do it like this. Well, so who is responsible for the quality of the software? Like there are like few names that basically mean the same. So we have a tester, we have a beta tester, we have a quality assurance engineer, and yeah, that's basically it. It's usually called QI now. Tester is a kind of bit older term. Beta tester, I haven't heard that for quite a long time. Nowadays, they usually use QA as quality assurance. Today we had a discussion in the work in Barclays that QI is actually above testers or testing, because testers are just doing testing, and QI, they also like prepare definition of done, definition of ready, documentation, the processes and stuff like that. But for me, quality assurance engineer is basically test engineer. Maybe they have a little bit more responsibilities, but it's basically the same stuff. The worst thing that can happen in company is some kind of a blame culture. You should have blameless culture in the company. If you have blame culture, you should leave the company. There should be no blaming on anyone. So the project manager shouldn't say like, "Hey, you fucked it up. Like, what did you do? You didn't test this properly." Instead, what you should do is that you should make sure the situation that happened will never repeat itself. It will not happen again. You will get some feedback from it. You will learn from it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn something. So you should be in a blameless culture. But I wrote here that everybody actually in the team is responsible for the quality of software, not just testers or the quality assurance or the test lead, let's say. Yeah, test manager, test lead is also for me kind of like synonyms. Maybe you know that if you are working as testers, you probably saw some fights between developers and testers. Basically, developers don't like testers very much because they are adding them more work, and instead of delivering the software, the features, they have to repair the bugs, the defects, and it's because of testers, because they found out something. They should realize, the developers should realize that testers are helping them to achieve some desired outcome, what they strive to deliver to the customers, the good quality software. You can recognize good quality software in a way that there is not much complaints from the customers or the stakeholders or the users. Also kind of like synonym for me. Ideally, you wouldn't need L1 to L3 support because your software has very little bugs, if not any bugs, and it's very easy to use. It's seamless. It's intuitive to use. However, there are more. There is basically everybody in the team is responsible for the quality of the software. Developers, they should be doing testing, but unit testing, which is also called white box testing. So what it is, basically, maybe you heard words code coverage. That's basically saying how much code is covered by unit testing. And for example, in Barclays, we have a methodology that says 80% of code should be covered by the unit test, which is quite optimistic. So we usually when we reach 50-60%, it's already considered as good. What does it mean? So if a developer writes like lines of code, code coverage means this code is covered by some kind of unit testing. So if you are having a method that is doing sum of integers, you will write at least one test that will test that if you add 5 to 6, the result will be 11, and that's it. Testers, they do all sorts of different tests. I wrote just some of them here. End-to-end tests, so that's like one flow. Exploratory testing. If you have agile development, there is some time before the developer will finish developing this feature and he will release it and it will be deployed. So during the meantime, you can prepare test data, or you can do some exploratory testing, or you can read documentation if there is some documentation. But you can do exploratory testing. So you will get familiar yourself with the application, because when you join some company, you will basically be gradually becoming expert on that software product. So you will know all the inner workings of the software itself. And exploratory testing will help you with this. And during exploratory testing, you can also try the negative scenarios, because when usually a product owner is writing a story for you, it's usually a happy path scenario, also called happy day scenario. That means that the user knows what he wants and he puts correct inputs. But the product owners are almost never thinking about the situation when the user or the customer will write incorrect inputs and what will happen with the incorrect values. There should be the application shouldn't just collapse or shouldn't freeze. It should somehow handle this. So the developers have to think about this as well, and they should handle the exceptions. And you can cover them with the negative scenarios. So testers are usually doing the black box testing. I have also, like, I put here one slide with vocabulary. I will talk about it a bit more. And then you have some kind of tests can be done by the users themselves or the customers. I write here a canary release. That's basically a release to a limited set of the users. It's like a new version, but instead of putting it online for everybody, you just select a certain subgroup of those users, and they will be your canaries. If you know what the canaries were used in mines in like 150 years ago. So there will be your canaries to see if it's seamless, if it's innovative, if it works as they expect, if they need some help with how it works, etc. If you like computer games, you might know about early access, which is basically, it's kind of something like canary release, but in the case of games. So if there's a campaign for some game on Kickstarter, you can pay some amount of money and you will get it when it's released, or you can pay a bit more and you can get like early access to this game. So it will be like a beta version or not finalized version. And during that, there will be still some development, so you can kind of affect how the game will look like at the end. And we've got, of course, A/B tests for websites. For websites, this is done by users. This is not done by testers. What does it basically mean? You have a version A, you have a version B. You will divide your customers into two groups randomly. It's not like based on gender or age or whatever, it's random. And one group will get the old design and the second group will get the new design. Or it could be new design A and new design B. And you will be watching, but you need some kind of metric. You will get the feedback how they are coping with the new design. For example, if buying some goods from the e-shop is taking them too long, comparing to the other design, you know that this design is not the best and the other one is obviously better. You can also watch some kind of turnover, which means how many people visited this website versus how many people buy something and finish the process of buying these goods. You can utilize a heat map. A heat map is a nice way how to see what people are clicking on, what they are using, what they are interested in. Basically, heat map is like you are recording where is the cursor moving around and clicking around. So you see that users are clicking on this kind of, for example, part of the menu, and this down is absolutely not interesting for them. And the reason is because they are just not interested in that. So you can think about it and you can say like, okay, in the next release, we will drop this because people don't care about it. So we will replace it by something else. And from heat map, you can see also what they are interested in the most. So it's a very useful thing. Okay, I don't know how much of you will be total beginners, how much of you are juniors or seniors, or you are just aspiring test engineers, you are just want to change your career. So I prepared a bit of vocabulary. I have a really huge vocabulary because I have actually a second job. I'm a tutor, I'm a teacher of software testing. I'm doing it exactly 1 year. I started last year in February or January. And I'm teaching absolute beginners. So people who used to work in gastronomy, and because of COVID, they were laid off, or there are women on a maternity leave, they have like some time, so they want to learn something new, so they are thinking about working in IT, so they buy this course about software testing, and I'm teaching them the early parts. And because I'm teaching them the early parts, I'm doing I'm showing them like a vocabulary with the words that we are using. They are English words, but we are using them in Czech as well, a lot of them. And then I'm showing them some live testing. So I open up some website and I show them, I tell them like, okay, do some exploratory testing, try to find something, make a screenshot, make a GIF, send it to me, and I will tell you if it's a bug or if it's not a bug. So I have a vocabulary for them, and from that I decide to give you a few terms that we are using. Probably you know code freeze or change freeze. It's basically before major release, you just don't want to make any change to the code base in the GitHub. So you stop developers from pushing new code into it. So it could be deployed. It could be merged, deployed, and tested properly, and only after that you will unfreeze and you will let developers again to upload a new code to GitHub. Triage. Unfortunately, in my country, we had to use this word during pandemic. Doctors on the emergency, they unfortunately had to do the triage. In this case, it means they had to decide which patients they will take in and which patients are not worth it to save, because we had so many hospitalized people that there was not enough hospital beds in hospital. So yeah, a lot of people died during pandemics, and some of them died because there was simply no place in the hospital. But in case of the development, triage means that in Broadcom it was a Scrum Master who decided this. It was basically when you have a few days to release, and your testing team finds out 3 bugs, and there is just time to fix 2 of them. Thank you. You will do the triage. You will decide which 2 of them you will fix, and the third one you will just put it as a risk, and you will risk that it will be in the release, but it could be some kind of cosmetic bug or some minor thing, which is not very important, and so we will not fix it. And yeah, that's the triage. So you have to decide the priority and severity of these 3 bugs. Sorry, I'm talking a lot and my mouth is dry, and because I'm Czech, I will drink beer. So priority and severity. What does it mean? So priority, it's quite obvious. Okay, in Broadcom, I was deciding about priority severity, but initially I was asking the product owner, or I left it blank, and then during the sprint planning, we decided collectively on priority and severity. So priority, it's quite self-explanatory. It means which of the bugs, if you have more of them, which of them will be fixed as soon as possible. So usually the next sprint, because you already planned the sprint, so it should be in the next sprint. You have like a priority like high, medium, and low, and then you have severity, which means how much it affects the system or the product, the software product. So usually you have like minor, medium, major, and critical. Critical means it will screw up the whole application, and it's just you have to restart it. So that's like the highest priority. Like usually, if you have high priority, you also have high severity. I can't really think of an example when you have low priority and high severity, or high severity and low priority. Like maybe if you have 5 bugs with high severity, and you don't have like time to like fix all of them, then you can get a bit lower priority to some of them. But usually, if you have priority 3, severity will be also 3. So critical means the whole application is screw up. Major is some part of the application is screw up. Medium, some part of the application is screw up, but there is some kind of workaround. So you cannot do it in a normal way, but you find some kind of bypass, and you can still continue in the flow that you were doing. And minor, that's usually some kind of cosmetical thing, for example, some misalignment, or the colorings, or the colors are off, etc. Acceptance criteria. That's actually very important, because my major problem in Barclays, I started in June, and we finished the project in December. And originally, there were a lot of stories written that had no acceptance criteria. I was really perplexed, because the people that were working there as a business analyst, so they are basically, business analysts are basically kind of like product owners in the waterfall development. They are the middleman between the customers and the developers, so they can translate the business requirements to like a technical requirements. They are kind of like translators, basically. But when you need to implement something, you need to know the goal, like what is it doing, and in what and under what conditions. So the acceptance criteria must be concise. They have to be clear. You know what you are doing. Why are you doing it? Some stories could be like from a business point of view. Some could be from technical point of view. Example: customers wants full text searching in a history of some logs, for example. So the business value is obviously the full text searching itself. Technical wise, it could be that you did this, but it takes, for example, half a minute to get the results, which is a bit too long, right? Maybe you heard about this rule called 5-second rule. If you have some websites or system or software, and the response takes 5 seconds or more, the people will start thinking like, is it doing something? Is something happening? Did it freeze or whatever? So the response of the system should be up to 5 seconds maximum. So if we implemented this and it takes 30 seconds, it's a bit too long. So in that case, we can have a technical story, and we can say like, hey, we want to get this done in 5 seconds. And then the developers will do like a technical story. We already have the business value. Now we are adding the technical value. Backlog is like a list of epics and stories that will be delivered. Epic is like it's kind of like a big story. It cannot be done by one person in one sprint. It must be divided into several sub-stories or stories. And only when all of the stories are done, then the whole epic is done. Gray box testing. I was talking about white box testing and black box testing. So I put this here as kind of a joke, because it might sound like it's a mix between white box testing and black box testing. But because I'm interested in security, the cyber security, I found out about this gray box testing. And what some big companies are doing now, they are hiring a red team or they are doing penetration tests. What's the difference between penetration tests and the red team? Penetration test is some kind of security audit of an application. So you have the corporates, they are developing several products, and penetration test is test done on over one product only. red team is an offensive team that is trying to attack the whole company as it is. They can do it like remote wise, so they try to bust into the VPN or into the intranet of the company, or they can do some social engineering. So they put some kind of a costume as a workers. They go to reception. They say, "Oh, hey, we are here to check the pipes. Can you let us in?" They let them in, and they can walk freely around the company, and they can try to, for example, start a fire alarm, and then people will leave the building, and some of them will forget to lock their computers, so they just stick their computer and they will download code source from GitHub to the flash disk or something. So that's a red team. And these penetration tests and these red team, they would first have to do some kind of reconnaissance. So they would have to know what they are having in the company, what kind of assets they have, what routers they have, from which company, which model, do they have firewall, which ports are allowed, what are the policies in the company. And this would take too much time to get it. So to make it a bit easier for them, they have the complete documentation, and they know all about this kind of stuff. So red team has it a little bit easier than the actual bad hackers, bad hackers. And if the red team will not succeed in their attack on the company, you can be pretty sure that the hackers will also not succeed, because the red team has it a bit easier than actual hackers. All right. Now it looks like when you have no acceptance criteria. So I put here this this GIF because in Barclays I was really shocked in a bad way that the BIs are not regularly writing acceptance criteria. Or there was one business analyst who wrote as acceptance criteria the sentence was something like, all above should work as expected. What does it even mean? It must be testable, so you can verify that something was delivered in a way that you want according to documentation. We didn't have much documentation in Barclays. It was also very perplexing. At the end of the presentation, I have a list of some resources and some of the podcasts. I have more of them, but there is one podcast which is in Czech. It's called Fact Ups in IT. Very cool name. And the guy who works in HR is basically inviting guys from IT, and they talk about, well, fact ups in IT. And in one episode, there was a guy who said that if you are running out of budget, two things are getting out of window: documentation and tests. I was like, yep, that's the story of my life. And Barclays, though it's a really huge company that has a lot of money, it's a corporate bank. They don't have much documentation, and their BIs were not writing acceptance criteria very much. Okay, for some reason here the text is like this. Anyway, so tester, there is a several ways how to divide like roles of tester. It could be manual tester or automated tester. I personally don't like manual tester very much, because do you say manual developers or not? And if you don't say manual developers, why you don't say manual developers? Aren't they developing with their hands manually? I think they do, right? But you don't say manual developers. So why do you say manual testers? It's a bit stupid. And even if you have automated tester, he still have to write the tests with his hands, his or her hands. So it's still kind of manual testing, right? Because you have to manually write down the script, and then it will work automatically. But first, you have to write it by your hands. So I don't like this division very much. But you have more types of testing. You have a performance tester. I mentioned with the blaze meter. So performance. Well, in Turkey, it's a Muslim country. You don't have Christmas. we are most atheist country in the world, but we do celebrate Christmas. We buy a lot of stuff during Christmas. A lot of people are put themselves in a debt with a lot of money because they want to buy presents for Christmas. So what can happen on e-shops typically? In a normal month, you have, let's say, 5,000 visits per month, and let's say 3,000 people will buy something. In December, you will have 20,000 visits, and 15,000 people will buy something. And you have to have your system prepared for this, and this can be tested by a performance tester. The performance test is basically trying to see what kind of load your application is still able to process until you get the denial of service. As I mentioned, there is also penetration tester. It's not very common. Not many companies are buying into this. For some reason, then they will regret it. It's a bit similar to making backups. You have two types of people. One, people that do backups. Second, people that didn't lose their data yet. So we can say something similar with cybersecurity. We got two companies that are not buying penetration tests, they are not investing in cybersecurity, and companies that didn't have some security incident yet, but it will happen, of course. Especially during pandemic, there was an increase in cybercrime. Okay, I'm a bit thirsty again. And because I'm Czech, I have 2 beers prepared. So you can be penetration tester, or you can be member of a red team, which is a bit bigger group. You have a bit more responsibility than penetration tester. It's a very interesting work, but there is a boring part, because first part is very exciting. You will try to hack into the application or the product, but then you have to write a report about it, and that's the boring part. And red team member, you can try the social engineering part. That's very common. If you like improvised theater, this could be for you, because you have to be convincing. You are basically hacking people's minds, because you are trying to bust yourself into the company. And I also mentioned here chaos testing. It's a very brand new thing. It's from Netflix, 2017, I think. What does it mean? So if you have IT administrators, or the blue team, the red team is offensive team, blue team is defensive team. Blue team is like learning from the red team, and they are the defenders. But usually in a normal company, you have some kind of IT administrator, and he's basically not doing anything until something will happen. Some kind of incident, some kind of mishap, some kind of fucked up. Or there is a replacement of printers, and he just need to hook up a new printer to the net or something. But he's mostly passive, which is also why IT admins are not paid very much, but testers and developers are paid very well. And so there was from Netflix this idea called house testing. You might heard it also under the nickname HADR testing. It means high availability disaster recovery testing. It's a bit similar to performance test, but it's kind of random. And what is it? So in house testing, you are trying to basically screw up the backend to see how much you can screw it up until the application will fail. So for example, your application is running on 5 servers. So you will try to see what will happen if 2 of the servers will be switched off and 1 of the server will be restarting. What will happen? You have an application open on your laptop. The session is open. You are logged in. You have a token. Will the session continue? Will you be logged off? Will it be responsive? Will it be stopped? What will happen? So you are doing this with the house testing. Yeah, it's about 6 years old, this type of test. And Netflix came out with this the difference between performance tester and the house testing. You can try to guess. You can forecast. You can try to forecast when you will need the extra power. Let's say so. In my country, we have a Christmas, so you can expect a higher load during Christmas. In Turkey, we don't have Christmas, but we probably have Black Friday. Maybe we also have Black Friday in my country. So again, during Black Friday, companies are giving this kind of discounts in Dirim. So again, you can expect a higher load of a higher number of people appearing on your website, buying stuff. So you have to be prepared for this. So you can try to guess when you will need more resources to handle this. And house testing is kind of random. Something can happen, some power outage. You cannot predict power outage. Yeah, power outage can happen during a storm, but you don't know when it will be like a really bad case of storm, right? So house testing is like more random. And performance testing, you can guess from the history when it will repeat some events and you will need higher performance. In one Czech podcast, I heard that there is like an opening for this kind of position, which is like a negative scenario tester. So that's the tester. It is always thinking about just the negative scenarios. So product owner will come with the happy path scenario, and a negative scenario tester will say, yep, I will try to screw it up in this way. I haven't seen a position opening of position with this negative scenario tester. I guess it exists, but I kind of keep it in mind that I always think about these negative scenarios. And so whenever I read some tickets in Jira, I will always think about how to try to screw it up. So question, is there any specialized artificial intelligence developed for software testing purposes? I don't really know. I can. I found on LinkedIn article about artificial testing in games. There were like six examples. When the developers were trying to get, one was with this new Lara Croft Tomb Raider. When the developers were getting some feedback from the testers, like it was automatically getting the feedback from the players, which paths they were taking during the game, and based on that, they could try to change the level design to make it more difficult or more fun. So, for example, they could deduce, they could see how many attempts they tried in some path, and if they see if they didn't work, they try a different path. And they also try to make a bot that will run through this game, to this level, and its design, and it will see how it will work. So I only know some examples during the development of games when they tried to utilize artificial intelligence. But tool that is used for testing, which is using artificial, I don't know. Embedded test engineer, what does it mean? So I have only one experience with this, work experience, and it's with the pacemakers, and it was it was a bit fake in a way that basically to get the real data, we would have to find some old people and read out input from their pacemakers, and this would be a bit difficult. So we had pre-generated some data from the pacemaker, and then we were testing or we were comparing whatever these data were legit. So if the spike looks correct, if the spike was at the end of the page, if it was like on the new line correctly, and that kind of stuff. So embedded test engineer is an engineer who's testing the embedded devices. Basically, any new car is basically embedded device. It's a computer on wheels. Not just Tesla, but like also Volkswagen or any new cars, really, they have a huge computer in the middle instead of that panel, right? There's a screen. It's a touch screen. You can select some modes. You can control the climatization. Yeah, it's a specially dedicated computer. So cars are basically computers on wheels nowadays. So you can be also a test engineer of this kind of stuff. Ephemeral defect. Yes. So in Barclays, we are using Jira, and when I'm selecting severity, there's like 10 or 15 types of severity. There's like a minor, medium, major, critical. Then it's like ephemeral. What do you think about tester? Must be analyst or not? Maybe tester team is different person. What is your idea? What do you mean maybe tester team is different person? I don't get this kind of sentence, but tester shouldn't be doing the analysis. And you should never group more roles into one. For example, in Barclays, this year we want to switch from Waterfall to Agile design, Agile way of development. And Scrum Master, which is the guy who's leading the meetings, they want to make Scrum Masters from the most senior developers, which is bullshit, because you are constrained, you are losing the most experienced people to do this kind of like mundane work. Maybe tester team is different. Yeah, I know that analysis is like business analyst, but what do you mean by maybe tester team is different person? I don't get the second sentence. I understand that analyst is business analyst. So you should never group them. There should be a specifically dedicated person that will be the Scrum Master, and you shouldn't make the senior developer, the most senior developer, even the Scrum Master, because Scrum Master is it's not really secretary. It's more like a guy it's like a moderator or a guy who's leading the team, and they are deciding thanks to him what they will do in this sprint, what they will focus on. Yeah, he shouldn't be that. There should be different roles. In Agile development, you have a Scrum Master. I just described it. You have testers, you have developers, you have product owner, which is equivalent of business analyst in the Waterfall. And yeah, I guess that's it. So these are the roles. You should have one tester per 2 or 3 developers. And today they told me that I will be the only tester with 8 Indian developers, which is not the thing I want to do. But I'm getting, of course, I was talking about, severity. So in Barclays, in Jira, we have like minor, medium, major, critical, and then we have ephemeral, then we have not decidable, not applicable. We have so many different types. And I was intrigued by this ephemeral. So what do you think ephemeral could mean? Ephemeral bug. I'll write it in the chat. It's ephemeral. Okay. Actually, I'm already talking for 1 hour. So I will show you. This is from the .com company, what I found out. So I had a link to a workspace. You can see Blaze Meter in the URL. And it opened up this pop-up 80 times or whatever, instead of just once. You can also see that in the URL, it's trying to switch between the workspaces, but it doesn't work. And it will always trigger this kind of error message. And I show it to, as you can see in the chat, I show it to product owner, and he said, okay, reproduce this and then make a defect. I wasn't able to reproduce this, and that's why it's ephemeral defect. Or in Broadcom, we didn't even call it ephemeral defect. We just said it's no defect because I couldn't reproduce it. I don't remember. It's like 4 years ago, this this thing that happened. So I don't remember how I was able to do this, but when I was trying at that time, I couldn't get it again. And the thing is that computers, you might think they are very clever, but they are actually very stupid. But they are just very fast in doing some very small steps or very easy steps, like adding some numbers, storing some numbers, loading some values from the memory or stuff. And they are deterministic. They always, if you have some algorithm with some condition, it will always do the same exact thing all over again. To the point that even the generation of random numbers, it's actually called pseudo generation of random numbers or pseudo random numbers. Because if you would let the algorithm to run all the way, it will, after some time, it will restart and it will generate the same exact random numbers. So they are actually not very random. But the effect of computers being stupid but super fast and that they are deterministic is that you should be able to reproduce this kind of behavior. And I wasn't able to reproduce this. So in eyes of Broadcom, this wasn't the effect. And if I found out this in Barclays, in our application Barclays, I would create ephemeral bug in Jira. And here, this is interesting. This is eShop, which is very popular. It's like a grocery shop or like a online supermarket, basically. And you can order some foods, and the delivery boy will deliver you the goods that you are buying. If you check the URL here, the address here, it's an actual shop for customers. This is on production. And look how I managed to do it. I just click on Not Now. So I was registering myself via Facebook. I said, okay, allow cookies, whatever. I have like no more option than continue like this. And here, instead of filling it with my login, I click Not Now. And as you can see, it breaks down the whole application. And the error was 500. If you have a HTTP code starting with 5, it means there is a problem on the backend. So a very easy way to find out this bug, but for some reason the testers of this Czech company they didn't find out about it, and this is an example of negative scenario. So there was some product owner in this Czech company who said, "Hey, I want to implement, let's make it easy. Like, let's not even register them. Let's just register them through Facebook." And they did it, and they didn't think about the negative scenario. So this was a very easy way how to test this, and then they just didn't find out. So I wrote them on Facebook. They said yes, they fixed it, and as a reward, they gave me €4 of credit on their website, which is amazing because minimum order is €20. So yeah. Okay, now I have something for you. I have 2 GIFs, and I want you to watch it and decide whatever, if they are even bugs or not. If they are both bugs, if they are not, neither of them is a bug, or one of them is bug and the other one is not a bug. So this is the first one. It's from my favorite game that I was playing as a kid. I was just curious, so on YouTube I found out speedrun, a so-called speedrun. This is a world record, at least at the time that this was created. And you can pay attention to this part on the left top down corner because you can see the keystrokes. The player is actually like which keys he's pressing to achieve this behavior, to see whether it's easy or difficult to do this. So this is the first possible defect in the game. The game is from 1997, by the way, but quite old. And this is the second one. It's a bit longer. By the way, he managed to do this on 4th attempt, and it was still a world record. Yeah, and look at this. What will happen? He reached the edge of the domain. What will happen? And then he was able to basically skip the whole level and reach the boss of the level because he just jumped up at the end of the level, because normally you would have to go like this. You would have to go down, then jump up, go to the right, jump down, then again go a bit to the right, again go up, go to the right, go down, and you have to repeat this like 4 or 4 times. But in this way, he could skip the almost whole level like this. And yeah, if the cat falls in the water, it dies. But somehow here he managed that when he jumped on the edge, the Captain Claw didn't die. And yeah, you can see that the keystrokes he's pressing. So okay, so I want you to vote. So write in the comments 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you think A is a defect, B is not, then write 1. If you think B is a defect, but A is not a defect, write 2. If you think both are defects, write 3. If you think neither of them is a defect or a bug, it's the same thing. Wrote number 4. I will give you a few minutes, and I can drink beer in the meantime. Nie chcę tego do ciebie. Jestem na sobie. Cześć. Łukasz, co na sobie? Nie napisał nic.
Ale ja nie muszę napisać językiem.
Łukasz, co napisał? Nobody writes anything, really? Okay, so in my opinion, first one is defect and the other one is not. Why? Because if you check this, this is actually very easy to find out. When there is a blast damage, the character is pushed back a bit. And the testers, if they were even testers back in 1997 on this project, they probably did it with one dynamite, with one explosion. And they said, okay, he's pushed back a bit, but he didn't fall through the wall, so it works as you would expect, and that's it. That's it for them. This is called clipping, by the way, when you go through a wall. So they should try 2 or twice, right? 2 or 3 explosions consequentially, and they didn't for some reason. So I think this would definitely be a bug. This one is like I don't know how the guy even found out about this, because this is quite amazing when you think about it. Basically, when the character is hit, even when he's like flying in the air, he's like stops for a moment, and apparently you can jump. When he stopped, the game basically thinks he's on a solid surface, and he can jump again. So the speedrunners in the community of this game, they just try to stop in the middle of the air thanks to the explosion, and then jump again, throw another dynamite. This probably shortens the explosion because it should explode a bit later, I think. So that's why he opened this this screen, and it allows to jump the second time. So he has to jump like twice successfully. And as I mentioned, this guy succeeded in trying this only on 4th attempt, and it was still a world record at the time. Okay, so that's why I think that was the B is not a defect, because if I was test lead, you were my testers, and I found out this after the game was released, I wouldn't be mad at you, because this is like really difficult to pull this off. And like, why would you even trying to jump out on the edge of of the level, right? Why would you do that? So what is a corner case or edge case? So it's something that's not very common. It would not happen very frequently. My favorite example is calculating the age in some East Asian countries. Turkey is Asian country, but you are calculating age in the same way like we do, based on birthday. But for example, in Korea, they're calculating it through always based on 1st of January. So if you were born on 30th, and when you are born, you are already 1 year old. Yeah, it's a bit weird. So if you were born on 30th of December, you are 1 year old. And on 2nd of January, or actually 1st of January, 2 days later, you are already 2 years old, even though you are actually just 2 days old. Yeah, that's my favorite edge case about calculating the age, because there are some implications. It's like whatever you can buy alcohol or driver's license. If you would have some people if you would be delivering some products to those countries, you should take this into consideration, that they are calculating their age and possibly their age restrictions in a different way. I found out randomly about this. Okay, so now we are finally, after 1 hour, we are finally getting to what I wanted to talk first. So we have two main methods of developing software: Waterfall or Agile. Waterfall, there is some roadmap for a few years. It could be 2 or 3 years, even more. If you are starting from green grass, it will be even longer. So we have some list of requirements for a software that it has to have by the end of the cycle, and you have to implement this and this and this, and there is a little space to change those requirements, and the customers, they always change them. So then you are delivering something, and only at the end you realize, based on the feedback from customers, like, yeah, but we changed our mind, we don't want to do it this way, we want to do it this way. Which is why the waterfall type of development fails miserably quite often. And that's why there was this agile development approach from end of 1990s. Here you can see picture I took in one Czech company, Agile Manifesto. It's in Czech, but I can translate it easily. So as you can see, in Agile, you prefer individuals and interactions before processes and tools. You want to have a working solution instead of thorough documentation, but you should still have documentation. Cooperation with customers is more important than talking about the agreements. And adaptability to changes and reacting to changes is more important than sticking to the plan. There are a few examples of agile development. Scrum is probably the most popular. Extreme programming. I honestly never saw a job offering for developers for extreme programming, because in extreme programming you have basically two guys sitting at one computer and they are switching between the coding. So yeah, like one guy is coding and the other one is just checking it and saying like, yeah, but you are writing it in a not very understandable way. You should write it like this way. So you have basically work of one guy, but you have to pay two guys for it. So that's why extreme programming is not very popular. Scrum is probably the most popular way of agile development. Co tam nějaký zprávy? Nice. Okay, in one presentation I found this slide, so I stole it, and it shows the success rate of waterfall projects versus the agile projects. And as you can see, waterfall will fail in a lot of in a lot of cases. Agile will also fail quite. It's much better, but it's still, you can see that the success is like a 39%. All right, it's more than 3 times better than the waterfall, but you still see that challenge. Yeah, they stretched their deadline, or they didn't deliver some part of. and failed, you still got 10% of them that failed. Especially, it's pretty bad, especially for large size projects. Because in Agile development, you should have teams of maximum 10 people. So if you are switching from Waterfall to Agile and you had 100 people in the IT department, you will have to have 10 teams. And those 10 teams, they will also have to like communicate between each other. And it's like for 10 teams to synchronize, it's quite difficult. So that's why even in Agile for large SaaS projects, you still see that they fail quite often. One fourth of them, every fourth project will fail. Okay, and here I have a video. I'm not sure if you will be able to hear it. I will be for sure able to hear it. I'm not sure if you, but if not, then I will tell you what he's saying, and then I will ask you why is he saying it. Maybe you know Futurama. It's a popular show from Matt Groening, author of Simpsons.
You see, killbots have a preset kill limit. Knowing their weakness, I sent wave after wave of my own men at them until they reached their limit and shut down. Kid, show them the medal I won.
Did you hear it? Nobody's writing back. Okay, if you didn't hear it, the red-haired guy asked him how he managed to beat the kill bots. And he said because he exploited their weakness, and their weakness was that they had a preset limit of number of kills. So he was sending waves after waves of the soldiers until they reached the limit and they shut down, they turn off. I like to show this clip to my students when I'm teaching them about software testing. Why do you think I do that? Why do you think I'm showing them this clip? What's the relevance to the testing? Somebody will reply. If not, I will tell you. Nobody wants to try to guess? He basically exploited integer overflow. I mentioned it during the examples of why we should never underestimate testing, that Ariana 5 failed because there was a conversion from 64-bit to 16-bit integer, and as a result, integer overflow happened. So when you are calculating something, you are iterating something, you will reach the maximum limit of that variable. And when you reach the maximum limit and then you iterate once again, you will get the integer overflow and you will set this variable to the lowest possible value. And Zeb Brannigan, although he's stupid and cocky, I'm pretty sure he doesn't know what integer overflow is, but he innovatively used this kind of mistake in the software of the robots, killbots. Now I have another video here from a Czech comedy about sanity test. Does anybody knows what a sanity test is, or smoke test? Is the same synonym. And if you ever did it, there are two examples in real life where you should be doing sanity test. One is in this video. Nobody's guessing it. Okay, I will play it. It doesn't matter if it has a sound or not because it's in Czech. It's from a Czech movie, and then I will tell you why I played it.
Pravý přední bliká, pravý zadní bliká. Levý přední bliká, levý zadní bliká. Světla svítí. Jo, akorát, počkej, teď pojď se podívat. Tohle to svítí nějak slabě. To je možné. No, tohle.
To je normální. Dobrý den.
Dobrý den.
Dobrý den. To ukaž, pojď. Tak. Dobrý.
Stěrače stírají. Ostříkovače stříkají.
Že se nám do toho pletu, pane Pařízek, ale ty stěrače, ostříkovače, to nemusíte hlásit, to přece vidíte. Paříku, tudy strany. To je pravda. Díky. Erno, ty stěrače a ostříkovače, to nemusíte hlásit, to přece vidí.
So why did I play this? Sanity test, also called smoke test, it's a quick test on the production, not on production, sorry, on testing environment, to see that after some integration of new components, the behavior of the application didn't change. It works in the same way like it used to be. So you are checking its sanity, right? Sane and insane. Insane means that someone is crazy. Sane means the person is, well, normal, let's say normal. Although we all say we have a different definition for normal. So you are checking if the system is still behaving normally, or as you would expect, if that the system didn't go insane. If we were doing driving license, I don't know how in Turkey, but in Czech Republic, when you are doing driving license tests, or you are learning for driving license tests, our instructors are telling them that before every day that we are going to use the car, we should perform some kind of tests on the car to see whether it's working properly. We should check the brakes, we should check the lights, we should check the blinkers, we should check the oil if it's there is still enough oil in the motor. We should check the gas. We should check tires if they are not deflated. That kind of, and maybe even more stuff than that. I'm pretty sure nobody ever does that. I also don't do it. But this kind of test we should be doing. As I mentioned, sanity test is done on a test environment, and we have a car from the production line. So in order to be an actual real sanity test, it should be done on some kind of prototype. But that's just a detail. Let's just say that's the sanity test. And the second example I would be giving is when you buy something from second hand. It doesn't even have to be electronics. It doesn't have to be phone or a digital camera. But let's say it's a digital camera. So we are buying a DSLR, and you just don't give money and take the camera, and you just go whatever from some stranger that you just met online. You will perform this kind of sanity test. You will check whether you can focus, whether the display is working. You will check if you can take a picture, if the picture is safe on the SD card, the memory card, if you can delete from the memory card, if you can access the menu, if you can switch the languages in the menu, and that kind of, if you can switch the lens. And this could be also considered as sanity test. So that's why I showed this. There, I have a question. Is TDD a technique? TDD stands for test-driven development, of course. I will give a few seconds if somebody wants to write something in the chat. I guess it doesn't. They don't. Well, I think it's not. I think it's a mindset basically. It's for the developers again. It's not for testers themselves. Now the very buzzword in IT is the shift left, right? So shift left basically means to test as soon as possible, and not at the end of the cycle, but as soon as possible. And for this, perfect for this is the TDD, test-driven development. So the developers will basically first write test, even if they don't have implementation yet. They will write a unit test. It doesn't test anything, so it will fail, of course, because the method hasn't been written yet. And then they will write as much code, as minimum code, as much as minimum code possible to make the test pass. And then they will refactor the code they wrote. So they will try to make it more readable according to some standards. For example, Python has PIP 8 standards. Maybe you heard about it. A PEP 5 standard. It's like a standard of writing code in Python, and they will make it readable for other developers. And that's done. That's the one cycle of this. And again, they have a new feature to implement. So first they write empty test, it will fail, they will write as much as code as possible to make this test pass, and then they will refactor. So it's more like a mindset actually than a technique development. Okay, so we're actually approaching the end of this session, and surprisingly, I was actually talking for 80 minutes. I thought it would be more like 50 minutes, but okay. Here I have some things that I recommend to watch to my students. I also recommend it to you if you like history of IT. I will recommend Microman. It's about 8-bit computers. Maybe you know ZX Spectrum. It's a very old computer, but when I was a kid, I was playing with it. My uncle's place. Pirates of Silicon Valley. That's a very good movie. It's like a half documentary, half movie about basically time that Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak came to Palo Alto Research, and they stole GUI, mouse interface, and like object programming. Very interesting. Takedown is a movie about capturing Kevin Mitnick, most famous hacker in the world. The Net is also it's my beloved movie. Sneakers is also a very popular movie about social engineering. There are some series. Mr. Robot is probably one of the best and most accurate shows about cybersecurity. Silicon Valley is more like a comedy, also a good series. And on YouTube channel, during my my lectures, I like to show this channel called Decino. It's a guy who does code review of Doom because Doom was released as open source. So all of its code is available for you on GitHub. You can download it. And this guy is doing code review of this code. So he's showing that, for example, some behavior was meant like this, but because they made a mistake and they use a Boolean variable instead of integer variable, it doesn't happen. And yeah, it's a very interesting channel to watch to know how code review works and to learn a bit more. I love podcasts. Interestingly enough, in Barclays, they decided to block YouTube, so I cannot listen to whatever soundtrack I want to from YouTube. They also just recently blocked Spotify. They are thinking about unblocking it, but I found out about these podcasts that are not on Spotify or neither on YouTube, and I was listening to them during those 7 months, those last 7 months. I learned a lot from them. I mentioned I'm interested in cybersecurity, so I have several about security. This QA Lead is a very good podcast if you are a senior test engineer and you wanna be a test manager or test lead or QA Lead. This is a very good podcast to listen to. Each episode is like 1 hour, but that's okay. This is my favorite. This is like 20 minutes. So it's once per week. It's quite short. It's nice. This is like Electric Frontier Foundation. It's about like freedom of speech, independent internet. Also a nice podcast. There is a brand new one about cybersecurity. They just have 2 episodes, but it also sounds like a good podcast. And the last one, Dark and Diaries, that's a very good. The production quality of this podcast is really high. And it's basically stories from dark web, about hackers, cybercrime, cryptocurrencies. Very interesting. Okay, and here I have some games. We had a famous teacher in the history in 17th century. His name was Jan Amos Komenský, and he said "Škola hrou," which in Czech means learning by playing. And yeah, if you want to learn a bit more about how to work with terminal interface, there are like these 3 games. The last one is for free. Big Burner is for free. If you like cats, Turkish people love cats, so you can try much. You can learn a bit with. You can learn a bit about machine learning with cats with this game Wild to Learn. It's about a programmer who has a cat, and he learns that his cat can communicate with him, and he can try like a machine learning on the cat. This is also a nice adventure. House Heartbreak. it's a sandbox game, and like after 1 hour of playing, you will get like this hacking computer. You can hack all the objects in the game and change their attributes. It's quite interesting. Colobot is a bit older game, like you are trying to colonize a planet with robots, and you can program them in a language similar to C. If you want to learn Solidity, you probably know about Ethereum. So the Solidity is a programming language to write contracts upon Ethereum. So you can make a game with zombies in this language, in this website, Crypto Zombies. And then there is this like a JavaScript maze, and you have to modify the code so you can escape the maze in this game in a browser. Okay, this is actually it for me. That's all, and it was almost exactly 1.5 hour, as I wasn't expecting it that. So do you have any questions? If you want, you can open up your microphone, or you can just write it in the comments. Do you have some questions on me? Maybe some working experience or whatever. Yeah, like, or you can open up your microphone because I'm not talking anymore, so it's okay. Do you want the presentation, or do you want just the links? Maybe I can, or you can add me on LinkedIn if you want. My name is Tomas Olsan'ın. You can find me easily there. Even if you write it without the special characters, you should still be able to find me. I have these glasses on the picture, so I'm not wearing them usually, but for this I took them so you can recognize me according to these glasses. And in chat, I can write you. I can copy paste. Holy smoke! It's okay. Let's see. Nah, it takes the font size as well. Wait a minute. I will use Notepad. Put it in Notepad, and it should be format. Let's see. Yes. So like this, and the other slide. I will first copy it inside Notepad to destroy the formatting, and then yes. All right. So any questions? Someone? Something? Anything? I mean, anything related to testing? No one? Okay. I guess you are tired because it's like 20 minutes to 11, right? In the night. All right then. Thank you for listening. I hope it wasn't boring. I tried to be funny during the presentation, so I hope you like it. And yeah, see you. Or maybe perhaps during some other meetings. Okay, bye. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks for participating to everyone. We will upload this event to your YouTube channel. See you next event.